How's it going, folks? Welcome in to my list of the top 5 new Marvel properties that should have their own movies. Now, what I mean by new properties are characters or teams that have not been introduced in the MCU yet and do not directly deviate out of another established character or team. So, no She-Hulk or Miles Morales or a spin-off Avengers team on this list because they deviate from characters or movies that have already happened, and no Black Widow or Adam Warlock because Adam Warlock, he's been mentioned once, and Black Widow, she's already established, of course. But with that said, all those properties would make for great movies. Since Marvel Studios has been consistently making movies for over 10 years now, of course, all the A-listers and most of the B-listers that they own the movie rights for have already shown up, or at least are in production. Even the majority of the C-list characters have been introduced, like a Runaways show has already been completed, so as far as new properties go, things get a little obscure. However, my picks, I believe, are all plausible choices for movies down the road, and I rank them in order of least likely to most likely to be produced. I probably won't be changing any Marvel executives' minds by these, but hey, maybe so. And if any of these do end up happening, then at least I can say I called it, and that's fun. So, without any further ado, my number 5 is for Marvel Studios to invent an original character for a film, and have that be the main character. So the advantage of making a new character is that it can fill whatever niche needs to be filled and tailored specifically to MCU continuity and brand. An example of the best case scenario is Harley Quinn over at DC. She shows up in Batman the Animated Series, and then she's an A-list villain. I'm thinking, though, if there is a specific type of hero, or they need a certain type of hero for a specific genre, and they don't have the movie rights to any good candidates, or they just can't find any good examples from the comics, then they might as well make an original hero. Coming in at number 4, I've got the Infinity Watch. If you're not aware, the Infinity Watch is a team with the members entrusted to guarding the Infinity Gems. Usually each member has a gem to guard. I think more than one person can guard a single gem, but the point is to keep them separate. Why this is lower on the list is because I know Marvel is aware of their products stagnating, and they probably don't want to dwell on the Infinity Stones any more than they have to, but this movie doesn't need to come out anytime soon. I can see this as an epilogue to Infinity War, like, give people a break from the Infinity Stones for like 5 years or so, then people might be ready for more. Even though the team would be a new property in the MCU, some of the members are already established, and some are already popular, which is a nice selling point. But of course, there are some new characters as well, which is exciting. Another nice thing about Infinity Watch is that the premise lends itself to flexibility with the lineup, like you could add Doctor Strange or whoever else is popular at the time. For number 3, I've got the Thunderbolts. The Thunderbolts are one of the more popular Fringe comics. I think Marvel Studios considered making a solo Loki movie, which never happened, but I think people are still interested in a Marvel villain movie, and Thunderbolts could be a good way to facilitate that. The biggest thing against the advertising of this movie would be comparisons to Suicide Squad, but the Thunderbolts are very different. They are not a government task force. They're basically a group of reformed villains who struggle with heroism, and sometimes it's highly questionable whether justice has been served. The first story arc of their debut run is great material for a movie. There are a few twists and reveals, so I won't spoil anything. But if you're interested, it's collected in the first 2 volumes of Thunderbolts by Kurt Busiek. I think it's called Thunderbolts Classic. That's the trade paperback or most recent printing. That's how it's collected, Thunderbolts Classic. So remember that and check that out if you're interested. A lot of the members of the Thunderbolts would be new and hopefully could be portrayed in a non-boring way. But I mean, like, come on man, who wouldn't love to see Jolt? Like Zemo, he's been established and he's one of the most respected MCU villains among fans and critics, and I think the writers like him a lot. Plus, where they left off with him in Civil War, I think leads nicely into where he is at the beginning of the Thunderbolts, and of course that would be great natural progression of his character. Hawkeye gets in on the team eventually, so Thunderbolts is another way to get him more involved. This property, it lends itself well to a franchise. You can get many movies out of the Thunderbolts, mainly because over time the characters change and grow significantly, and the roster, it changes on occasion as well. For number 2, I'm thinking Moon Knight. The character already has a dedicated fan base, and Marvel Studios is usually aware of fan interest towards these types of things, so that alone increases the likelihood of something Moon Knight happening. Moon Knight comics can vary in tone, but what usually is the most well received are like the gritty crime dramas that also have elements of mysticism and occasionally become supernatural. That type of story more so resembles Marvel's Netflix shows, so the likelihood of it becoming a movie is less so than a Netflix series, but a Netflix series of Moon Knight would still work on that lower budget, just like the supernatural stuff would have to be toned down, but supernatural stuff isn't even always in Moon Knight comics to begin with. I can see people really liking that Warren Ellis, Declan Shalvey aesthetic of like the muted palette contrasting with Moon Knight in his glowing white clothes. Plus, Moon Knight has enough unique character traits to distinguish himself, like his multiple personalities and his sometimes unhinged behavior, and the rich mythology should be enough to easily carry his own franchise. Before I reveal my number 1 pick, I've got a runner-up, which is Moondragon. There aren't any other characters in the MCU yet that have a similar personality or power set to Moondragon. At least when Starlin writes her, she's so confrontational that she's basically like a villain, and she actually was a villain for a while. But the MCU, it doesn't really have any psychics except sort of Mantis, so that would be a cool ability to explore. Her backstory connects with other characters already in the MCU, and she's bisexual, so if Marvel wants to earn some goodwill for representation, Moondragon is a good choice to go with. The reason why she didn't make the list is because I think it's more likely that she's brought in as a part of the Guardians of the Galaxy or Infinity Watch, as opposed to getting her own movie. Alright, so for my number 1 pick, I've got Nova. So, he might not be in the height of his popularity right now, but out of everything on this list, he has the most exposure to mainstream audiences. Like, he's appeared in the 2 most recent Marvel vs. Capcom games, he was on that terrible Spider-Man cartoon on Disney XD, and that's basically it. Occasionally he'll show up in current comics. He does have a fair amount of respect from fans of Marvel's cosmic comics though. Nova's involvement in Abnett and Lanning's Annihilation run created some fans, but the fact that the Nova Corps has already been introduced and sort of spins out of Guardians of the Galaxy helps make the case for Richard Rider to show up. The main challenge would be landing on a non-generic tone for this character. On that surface level, he looks kind of like a generic superhero or sci-fi warrior. I mean, I personally like the look, but the marketing would have to be very clear about the tone and make his characterization distinct. There isn't really a definitive take on Nova. He has a lot of similarities with Hal Jordan and Spider-Man as a teenager, so the creative team should take liberties to differentiate him. Like, the character is pretty open to interpretation. In fact, the Guardians of the Galaxy movie feels pretty different from the Advent and Landing run. So some directions I could see taken could be just a straight up space epic, a hard sci-fi, another quirky comedy, a psychedelic space adventure, a police crime drama in space, or something else that I didn't mention. As far as what I could see working the best is at least having the backdrop of some sort of police drama. Of course, those other directions could be successfully combined as well. Like, I've got no objections with an epic sci-fi psychedelic space police adventure, but in all seriousness, I don't know too many movies about interplanetary space police. I mean, Green Lantern made a pathetic attempt, but Nova can learn from that and be something fresh. He also has the mythology and potential depth to explore, which could definitely carry a movie, and Marvel Cosmic contains a lot of good material for the MCU, so I think Nova is the next logical step in expanding that. So that's the list. I feel like I did a pretty thorough job researching and considering the options, but if you think I missed something, then feel free to let me know, and thanks for listening.